Welcome to Maintenance Care's webinar on preventative maintenance. I'm Dino, and I will be your host and moderator for this event. Without further ado, let me introduce you to your trainer today, Susan Fowler. She is our senior trainer at Maintenance Care, and she will guide you through the webinar. Susan, take it over.
Thank you, Dino. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with everybody. Make sure that everybody can see my screen now, my mouse moving around. So we're going to circle back. Dino just mentioned too about reaching out to customer support. I'm just going to reinforce what most of you probably already know. When you log into your system, you have the support icon in the lower area, just under your navigation points within the system, that little support icon. And then just over to the left of it is our online wiki guide. So this is important because there's a lot of really good information that you can access within there. There's keyword search, there's videos, there's step-by-step written and visual instruction. And actually some of the things that we're going to be talking about, if you wanted to sort of remind yourself on some of the things that we're going to discuss as it pertains to preventative maintenance, there are step-by-step instructions along in the wiki guide too. Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about preventative maintenance. It's sort of like a catch-all phrase that people use, but technically in our system, and you know, depending on whatever maintenance you are doing, it sort of falls under three different categories, right? It falls under preventative maintenance, which is usually equipment-based, right? Things that you want to keep in top shape so you don't have breakdowns, whether it's any sort of building specific maintenance or machine related maintenance. And then you have compliance, right? So compliance is basically things like anything to do standard across the board under the NFPA, which is fire safety or life safety, right? And that is something you can set up that's on a schedule, whether it's done in-house or it's done by an outside contractor. And then it's other things that you want to set up on a schedule. It can be anything you do on a schedule. It could be, you know, I check the grounds every morning when I first come in, and I want to set that up on a schedule. It's going to be dependent on a couple of things too that you need to also be aware of. A schedule might already be preset in your system, right? That you may or may not have access to. Just remember too that we do not provide access or change access for any users in the system. You will have to reach out to whoever has master user access, depending on your organization. It might be your IT department, it might be your help desk, it might be an individual at your company that may have access to the system. Okay, which means then if you do need access to the scheduler per se, then you would need to reach out to those people to get access provided, as we cannot do so. So again, depending on what access you have, over to the left of the screen, on my screen anyways, is the different navigation points within the maintenance care system. Specifically, you need the scheduler, right? The scheduler is where scheduled maintenance resides. And when you click on the scheduler, it brings up three basically subsections, right? There's a schedule, there's a chart, and there is a planner. The schedule, think of it as a list, your scheduled PM list. Okay, it's a list view. There's ways to change and view different parts of the scheduled list. The chart is sort of a carryover from the older version of maintenance care, what we would call like the basic version of maintenance care or the classic version of maintenance care. And it's sort of like what has been replaced by the planner, right? So the planner is a calendar view. The chart is basically a day view that breaks it down to Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And I'll show you what they both look like. But that's basically it. The schedule is your scheduled list of PMs that are either active or paused and set up in the schedule that you have determined. The chart shows you what is active. The planner shows you what's active too and allows you to edit. And we're going to walk through those things today. Okay, so let's look at the scheduled list first. And probably most of you that have been using maintenance care, you know, for a little while anyways, are probably aware that you have the ability to change your column view. And actually in any part of the system, you can change your column view. And all of the subsections have a default and you can adjust it. And I like to adjust mine, especially at the very beginning. I might be going in and testing things and moving things around, but I like a really clean view and then I like to add to it. So I like to take away information and add information. And what I mean by that is if I go to any one of the column headings, you'll see here, it sort of changes color. You'll see it goes into like sort of a light pale blue, but this little arrow comes up. And if you click that arrow, you can sort your columns, but more importantly, this is what I'm looking for. And there's a lot of information in this view, and it's going to be really dependent on what you want to see. And like I said, I usually start with the basic information and add to it. So you can go down and you can check or uncheck any one of the columns. I like to start with the title of the PM, the potential fire date. And the potential fire date is basically the date that it's going to leave this part of the system and become a task and reset itself. So some people like to call it a trigger date or a fire date. It's basically the same thing, but here it shows up as a fire date. And then status. Now there's lots of other things that I can add, and I probably will, but I'm going to start with these three basic columns: my preventative maintenance task, my fire date column, and my paused. That makes it a little bit easier for anybody that has never really accessed this part of the system before to sort of look at what is in the system, right? What is in and what's current and active and what is still paused. And we're going to explain a little bit what that means in the system. And it's going to be dependent again on how you have initially been set up and what you're going to be doing when you're going in. So just like any other part of maintenance care, there is a filter. So again, you can filter by the category, right? And the category is basically the timing, the scheduled timing. Category can be daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly. So you can again filter. If you want to filter by a certain task type, you can. If you want to filter by a classification, or if some of these preventative maintenance are auto-assigned, you can do that, or you can do a keyword search. For anybody that has access to multiple licenses, you can also filter by a facility. Okay. But it also means too that you can filter your list out to what is inactive and what is active. So within the maintenance care system, some of your PMs might be paused because they're not applicable. You might have a generic list in. You just have decided that if you're not ready to trigger it yet, that's fine. But you can see anything that is active in the system and anything that is paused. Okay. We're going to talk a little bit about successful and what that means in the system. And if you see it, you should double check it. But we're going to go in and just filter by active preventative maintenance. So here's the list of active preventative maintenance in my system, all set up, all ready to go. Fire dates are all set up based on the timing and the schedule that I have put into the system. So if you're editing a PM that already exists because maybe the timing has changed or you're adding a new preventative maintenance task, there's certain things that we recommend to make it standardized for you and helpful for you, okay? If you have access to the system, you can add new PMs into the system. Like I said, some of our customers have master PMs that are in the system, which means you can edit to your schedule, but you cannot remove. Some customers allow you to add and have access to that system. Again, it's going to be dependent on how your organization has set up your access and what you can and can't do. You can add a new preventative maintenance task here. I'm just going to the add button. You'll see that add button throughout the whole system, right? Any of the subsections that you go into, if you have access to it, you can go in and add into that part of the system. So let's talk about how a structured preventative maintenance task is set up, right? You have three sections within the preventative maintenance task. You have overview, trigger date, initial notes, and other. We're going to start with the overview. And the overview is probably the most important part of building your preventative maintenance. Everything else is sort of like, gravy or additional information. So it's important to know how to standardize your preventative maintenance. So one, you get a clean view, and two, you get a clean report. Because remember, all of this filters down into reporting. So what I'm going to provide to you today is sort of not instructional information, but sort of help or a guideline for making sure that you're setting your preventative maintenance up properly. Okay, so we're going to start with the title of the PM. When you're looking at creating a preventative maintenance task, you got to go back to basically those three different types of PMs that I suggested is part of the norm, right? Equipment-based, compliance, and anything else that you're putting on a schedule. Okay, it's basically it. If you're dealing with equipment or even compliance, there's certain wording that's usually used. It's either inspection, testing, check. Try and use the same wording based on the type of PM that it might be. If it's an inspection, it's very formal, which usually means it follows some sort of due diligence criteria. So, for example, I'm going to put in a preventative maintenance task, and I'm going to put into, let's see, pest control. Okay. And I have to do this, I'm going to do this weekly in my title. So I put in the type of PM that it is, what it is. I put it's a check. It's not really an inspection or anything. It's a check, and I'm setting it up weekly. Do you need to put the timing into the title? No. The system, based on the schedule, determines that. And in the category when you're going to filter. But it's extremely helpful. And there's a really good reason why it's helpful. A lot of people are visual people, which means that task triggers and they see that it's weekly. They know that in that timeline, they've got to get it completed before the next time that it sort of triggers, right? So it sets sort of almost like an internal accountability in there. It's also too, not everybody knows in the structure of your setup how often things happen. And if you're going to pull that into a generalized report, that's extremely helpful. It happens every week. Well, I can go in and run a search just on my task list and go, oh, I can tell you it happens every week. So it's really easy, simple information, but again, creates that standardization. Not necessary, but helpful. In the facility license, you have to pick your license. So again, PMs can be built on a single license or if you have multiple licenses. Okay. Preventative maintenance does not have to be to a specific area, but it can be. So again, if it's building wide, the area is not really mandatory in there. You pick the classification, okay? Or if I have a task type under it, okay, so fire safety, general maintenance. If there's applicable task type, the recommendation is to use the applicable task type. Classification, let's talk a little bit about how classification works. If there's a predetermined classification in your system, then it probably means that you're going to use it. And classification can fall under a couple of categories. Under classification in our system here, sometimes an organization will set up a classification called compliance as an example, or audit as an example, which means that if you go into a report, you might have multiple different types of preventative maintenance tasks, but you only want to pull a report specific to compliance or audit. You can go and filter in, and that's what classification is. Depending on how your organization has set up their initial account, this may or may not apply to it, but I would always check to see if there's a list in there. And again, if that is something that is part of the protocol, then I would put it in. Task classification, if you have the ability to add it into the system, can be added in under the administrative part of the system if you have access. Again, use the online wiki guide to walk yourself through how to create it properly and how to set it up properly. Okay, you can also call customer support. So preventative maintenance also can be set to a specific room. So again, if it's building wide, you could put in here all building if you wanted to, or it could be just maybe the kitchen and laundry room if you wanted to put that in. It really doesn't matter. Then we get down to the most important part of the preventative maintenance task, the due diligence, instructional information. What needs to be done specifically? So when you talk about due diligence, you're talking about setting it up. So when this task triggers, it goes into the task list. The person, whoever's doing that inspection or check or test or whatever it might be, will open it up and they will see what needs to be done. I'm a really big proponent on this because if you have turnover of staff or if somebody's just new, they might not know what needs to be done. There is the ability within your preventative maintenance task to actually attach documents and link to a SharePoint. If you are going to attach any sort of document or anything in the system, I always make sure when I'm training customers to make sure that you add a note in here, see attached user manual, see attached policy, see attached link to SharePoint drive for policy, whatever it might be. You need to always point a person to something that may be attached in there. Okay. It's just helpful. Is it necessary? Well, it depends on how you look at it. I'm really big on providing that instructional information. So again, if you do see, see attached user manual or troubleshooting guide or instructional manual or see link to SharePoint or to policy if needed, right? So again, I can put in policy if needed. Okay. So again, if you're linking anything or you're attaching anything, reference it. It's easy to do in the system. Then the next thing I would say is that this is to be done by an outside contractor. I usually recommend, and this again follows through to reporting, to be completed by a certified professional contractor, right? It's easy to do. Now you can add, if you have the ability and you have the ability to add vendors to the system, you can assign to a vendor so you're tracking that information. Again, if you do have the ability on assigning to a vendor, check the wiki guide to make sure that you're adding that information in correctly. Okay, because there are things that you want to do in the system to set yourself up for success. So again, if it's to be done, professional contractor, I wouldn't put in the vendor names so much because vendors can change as long as you're sort of referencing it, right? And then you can assign the vendor and that can be changed easily then, right? So again, if you do add the vendor name in here, you don't have the ability to add it. Again, all of that has to be monitored and updated. So you want to keep it very generic. Then the next suggestion is number instructional information. I really like to see numbered information in here because it's a reference point, right? If I have 5 things that need to be done when I'm checking this, then if I need to correct something or there's some sort of deficiency, I can refer to that in my notes to say number 2, I actually checked and found that, one of the boxes was, not working and I can fix it, right? So again, number that information. So check all traps and discard as needed. If new traps are needed, and again, I can add that in. I can 2, if new traps are needed, please contact supplier, right? So again, I'm not going to put anything really elaborate and everybody has different information, okay? So let's just sort of recap a little bit more. The title of the PM and the timing, again, suggestion, not mandatory. Your facility license has to be added because remember, maintenance care is built on the ability to have multiple licenses. A preventative maintenance task can be specific to a certain area, but does not need to be. Task type, always make sure that you're putting in the correct type. Don't put everything under general maintenance, right? If a new task type is not in the system, again, depending on how your system is set up, you will go to the person that has the ability and the knowledge and the, I guess not the ability and knowledge, but I guess the ability to set that up for you if, again, you don't have standardized task types already in the system, okay? Room can be added to some manual entry. So again, if there's a boiler room, if it's a roof and it's not in anywhere, you can add that in. And then your instructional information. Is there a document attached? Is there a link? Classification to remember as part of that protocol. Duration is how much time does this usually take? Again, this can be pre-populated. As you know, part of the workflow in maintenance care is adding time to a task. So this can be preset. So if this takes an hour every week, put it in as an hour, or if it takes 35 minutes or 50 minutes, you can put that in. Okay, so all of that information can be added in here first. Then you go to the next section. And this is the trigger date, right? The potential fire date that this is going to happen. So you have to be very careful here because you want to make sure you set it up properly. If you look at the very top here, you have the ability to schedule the task to come or leave this part of the system at a certain time on that date that you're going to set up. So again, is it going to be, if you want it to come into your task list at 7 a.m., then you would pick 7 a.m. If you want it to be 1 p.m., you can pick 1 p.m. If you want it to be sometime before your day starts, then pick the day and time that you want it to be. Okay. So this one right here, one time, means that this is set up to schedule in the future once. And then it has to be reset for the next time. Okay. This doesn't mean that it's daily, weekly, or monthly. Again, it's a one-time scheduled task that may or may not come up in the future that you want to set up. For anything that's sort of weekly or daily, this is where you're going to go. So again, this is weekly. Is it 7 days a week or 5 days a week? 7 days a week, it'll be all of them. If it's only Monday to Friday, then I would just check off Monday to Friday, right? And then of all months. Simple and easy, right? If it's not, if it's weekly, or so if it's daily, sorry, I checked all the days. If it's weekly, I'll pick the day of the week that I want it to trigger at the time that I want to trigger. If it's daily, then I'll pick all the days that I want. And maybe it's only weekly during a certain season, so you can just pick the months that it is, okay? The next thing to look at is if it's monthly or annually or quarterly or semi-annually, then you can pick a specific day of the month of certain months or all months. You can pick a certain day of the month of all months or some months. So again, if it's quarterly, you would pick the months that you want it to be. You can have it trigger the last day of every single month, or you can have it trigger every so many days. So like if you want it to trigger twice a month, then you would set it up to maybe trigger every 13 days or something, keeping account that, February is that short month. And you can start it, again, if I want it to go like every 13 days or 14 days, starting on the first of a month, right? Which is usually a good trigger date to start. But in this case, this is going to be every Monday at 7 a.m. Okay. And then I have another section called initial notes. I can add more information in here. So again, if I just want to add, I could put in here if I wanted to, instead of in the due diligence, I could, please call the contractor. This can be edited, right? Once it triggers, so keep that in mind. The comments section, the detail section cannot be edited. This can be edited, okay? And then we have the other section. So there's lots of things in here, but we're going to really circle back to the two primary things that I mentioned, the attaching a document and a URL, right? And that's a link to like a Google Drive or a SharePoint Drive or somewhere that something can be attached. If you're going to be attaching anything here, then it has to be saved in the Space Center to pull it in from here. It doesn't allow you to go to your own system to pull a document in. It has to be saved in the Space Center. So be very aware of that. Instructions on how to save documents in the Space Center are in our wiki guide. So again, it allows you to categorize the type of document, but you have to be able to go in and select it and pull it from the Space Center. Okay, so again, the Space Center is maintenance care's document storage in there. If you don't have access, then you can request access for whoever handles your account, or you can ask somebody to save that document in Space Center for you. Okay. There's lots of other things in here. Again, whether they're necessary or not to you, you can go back and edit your preventative maintenance task at any time. And now I'm going to save. Okay. So usually what happens when you add a new preventative maintenance task, it goes to the end of your list. So you need to be aware that you see 15 preventative maintenance here at one time. And oops, it didn't go to the end of my list. Darn it, where'd it go? There it is. Oh, okay. So now it's set up to trigger sequentially, I see now. Okay. So there it is. It's going to trigger on the 19th. It's going to leave this part of the system and it's going to become a task for me to work through to get done. Okay. I'm going to walk through one more thing before we go into that part of the system. I'm in my active PMs right now, but remember there might be paused PMs in here. Paused PMs in a system means that they haven't been activated for whatever reason, so they will not trigger. You will open up each PM if there is paused in there, and you can go in and edit it to your schedule and have it trigger. Okay, so again, depending on how your system is set up, preventative maintenance is in there usually for a reason. Okay, If you ever need a scheduled list of your preventative maintenance and you have access to reports, you can actually go in and pull a scheduled list, a summary list of all your preventative maintenance tasks. It's a really handy tool to sort of go through this because this is basically paged, right? So I can't see the full list, but you can pull a summary in reports under the scheduler, right? So the scheduler is not a report function. It's not a task report. It basically just gives you a general summary of your preventative maintenance. But I find it's really helpful for customers to know that because they can go in and they can print themselves a list of their PMs and they can start going through it, be able to see what's annual or non-annual in there. And it's a good way to see whether or not you're missing anything or you need to add anything into the system. Okay. All right, so now we're going to go to our task list. Okay. So preventative maintenance, if it's triggered into the system, shows up as a system generated task. So there's my submitted by column. And just like when we were in the scheduler, everybody should remember that you can adapt your view here, again, in any part of the system, exception reporting. You can adapt your column view. So again, information that's important to you, you can add or remove information. So if you want to know if work orders are assigned to a vendor, or whether or not it has an attachment, or whether or not it has other information, you can go into your column view and you can add that information. So again, if there's an attachment, you can add that column. If there's a vendor, you can add that column. Who it's assigned to, you can add that column. There's lots of columns that you can add, and just sort of like a spreadsheet, you can make the columns bigger or smaller. Okay, so it's easy to navigate it. So submitted by shows up here, right? System is system generated, comes from the scheduler into the task list. So I don't know if everybody's aware, but you can actually separate your list, right? So if you just wanted to see work orders and you just wanted to see preventative maintenance, you have the ability to separate your view here if you want to. If you want to see just reactive or demand work orders, you can uncheck scheduled and click search, and that will give you a list of your demand or active work orders that come in usually from the request page or you've added them yourself. If you want to go over here to this field in your filter and you type in system, it will show you all your system generated work orders. Okay. You will note, and you need to keep an eye on this, there's a filter up here, and I probably, if you've sat in other trainings, I've mentioned it. This filter is a sticky filter, and what this filter means is it will stick. If I refresh my browser or if I log out of maintenance care, it keeps this filter. So if you want to go back to your original filter, right, whatever your date range is that you set up and you click reset, it will take you back to your original filter. Okay, so be aware of that and keep an eye on it. Lots of calls that we get into support saying, I can't see my tasks, and it's 99% of the time they just need to hit that little reset button on their filter. Okay. So again, if you wanted to see your preventative maintenance, you absolutely can see that in the system. Okay. So managing a task, a preventative maintenance task specifically, is the same as any other task, but there's a few things I would recommend when it comes to the system. Okay. Changing the status, obviously, you already are all aware of the status changes in the system, right? And again, you have the ability to go in and make changes to duration if it hasn't already been preset. You can assign tasks again here if you want to. All of that, can be documented in notes. When it comes to documenting the work, right? So again, you can see in there some of my notes that came in, test to be completed by a certified professional contractor. If my vendor was assigned, it would show up in here. But let's talk about once you change the status, whether you've assigned it, whether you've added your time, let's talk about the most important part of any task in maintenance care, right? Because remember, everything flows through to a report, notes. Okay. Notes are extremely important. So I always equate it back to paper. When you have any sort of paper tracking, whether or not you had like a 3-part maintenance request or you have any sort of log books that people would write in what they need, at the end of something being completed, you're going to document that it was done. You're either going to put your signature in or your name and a date on when something is done. There is no difference from this system to paper in documenting. The requirements are usually the same, and that means completed. Oops, need to spell correctly. Completed should be your note and your signature in the system. Okay. Because a lot of your preventative maintenance relies on that follow through to reporting, compliance, again, any sort of compliance or internal audits or external audits require that follow through for documentation. I did the job. I'm signing off that I did the job. I'm going to close it now. There were no issues because I would put that into my notes and I would put my time. Right now, again, the assigning part of it is usually what we would recommend, but not all tasks have to be assigned, specifically. It's really a good idea if there's more than one maintenance person. Again, your internal processes would request that. But that in there, that note and that signature, 99% of the time, you should be doing that. There are exceptions to some preventative maintenance tasks, depending again. Remember, we talked about those 3 different levels, right? The preventative equipment based, the compliance, and anything that you're putting in that you do on a schedule that really doesn't fall into that. You just want something to document that you do this work every week or every day, right? And then that might fall under a different criteria for the signature and everything. But if you get into the habit of doing this, then it becomes routine and there's no question. Again, additional notes on what you might have found, or if you had a concern that you wanted to sort of track, then you could put that information in and then you would save, right? So this is important. That little check mark there is built into the main system, but everybody, I don't know that they're aware of it. That check mark is also in the mobile app. Okay, there's when you go into your notes section in the lower left corner, there's a little me button. That little me button is your internal signature, and then you save. That's basically it. There's nothing complicated. Maintenance cares, we're not at the level where we can do the work for you, right? You still got to do the work, but documenting the work should not be time consuming as far as doing the paperwork. Just like anything else that we train on, the notes are the most important part of that task. So again, it also has that follow through to reporting that we talked about, right? Being able to pull a report, being able to document that the work was completed. It's just like paper. You need to say, I did the work and it's completed. And in some cases, you might still have some sort of version of paper. It could be an inspection report because you have the ability to, if you wanted to, you can add a soft copy document. If you have an inspection report, you can add it if they've emailed it to you, or even if they've left it for you as a paper copy, you can use your phone and take a picture of it and attach it. Just reference it in your notes, right? See attached inspection report if you want to keep a soft copy of something. So again, always reference something, even in a standard work order. If you have attached anything, I'm always big on it and referencing it, right? Just like when we had those notes come in, right, from the scheduled tasks saying, make sure it's done by a certified professional, or make sure that you look at the document attached, or make sure that the link is there. It's the same thing in notes as far as referencing goes. Maintenance care is not set up to make it complicated in the system, right? It's set up to make it easy and not time consuming. So that's why those steps are sort of reinforced. Assigning, changing status, adding time, adding notes, adding signature. Again, the duration is not mandatory. We always recommend it. Assigning, again, accountability is built into the system. So if you get into the good habit of starting at the point of doing that, it should be very helpful for you. That's basically it. There's nothing complicated about it. Same as a standard task, again, just with a little bit more reinforcement for compliance. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you, Susan.
Okay.
Thank you very much. We've got some questions. Fred, can graphics files / text can be included in the comments section?
So I think I'm understanding what you mean. So are you saying about adding a picture in the
The
comment
comments
section?
section, yes. A picture or a file.
I'm going to
When you
be
create
right.
APM.
Yeah. I can't say that I've ever tested graphics per se, like adding a picture in the comments section. So I can't give you an actual accurate. Um, yeah, I can't say that it can be put in. I would say it probably might come through as just junk when it goes through as a task. So I don't think you can put that in. I've not seen it ever done, but I've never tested it myself either. Do you know, have you ever
No,
tested
never.
anything? Never.
Then a
I would,
file is not in the
yeah,
comments section. It
I would
appears in
say
the document
probably
section.
that, yeah, the document section is where it would be. I can't see that it would come
No,
through. Like I see, it's either not going to populate, you might get an error, or it might just show up as text junk in there, but I can't say that I've ever tested it. Good question, though.
good question. Yes. And Fred, what you can do is also add a link in the
Mhm.
that you can probably do, but I'm not even sure. We need to look at that. I'm not even sure we can do that. But I would put everything in the document section.
Yeah.
Um, and Fred again, can multiple documents be attached to the URL box and the attachments from Space Center? So essentially, can you add more than just one document to
So
a
at this
PM?
time, that's a good question. And at this time, if you're linking to documents in SharePoint or a Google Drive,
Yeah.
you could link to a folder that you may or may not be able to open from the system. I'm not sure. I've not tested that portion of it, but there's no ability at this time to add multiple documents from the scheduler. Okay. Once it becomes a task, yes, you can add multiple images and documents, but the scheduler only really allows you to add one document and one link at this time, not multiple links.
So, thank you.
Okay.
Fred, how do you view the attached document from Space Center from a scheduled task? So how do you view the attached document from
It's a
Space
good
Center from a
question.
scheduled task?
It's a
Yes.
good question to ask. So let's go take a look at Space Center. So the one thing about Space Center is the fact that you need to know what category you saved it in and how you named it. So think about when you're saving any sort of document to your own drive, right? It's the same protocol here. You have a filing system, right? So when you're going to add here, you're going to be adding the document and the name of the document. So I really want to emphasize naming something to be found is important, right?
Yep.
So again, what are you adding in, right? What is the name of the document? Are you adding a compliance document? Are you adding a user manual for a certain piece of equipment? Naming it is important. Okay, so again, I want to really reference that because then you can find it. And remember, it's searchable here. But then too, the system allows you to categorize what you're adding. Okay, so again, if you're adding a compliance document, put in a compliance. If you're adding a maintenance guide or a schematic or a blueprint, it allows you to filter down. So again, just like anything that you save to your own drive, naming it properly so you can find it, right? And making sure that you categorize it properly. And then you can search. You either can search by category or you can search by keyword. Okay, so again, keep that in mind. If I went in here to the system right now, I'm just going to get out of here, and I just put in the word manual, it will bring up all of my items that I have put in as a manual. Okay, so really important to make sure that you name it properly and you categorize it properly.
Thank you.
Okay,
Reese is asking, can you edit a previously saved system check or only through master user? Hmm.
okay, so
I'm
um,
trying to understand this one. Can you
yeah,
edit a previously saved system check?
okay.
I guess a PM or only through
So
master
I'm
user.
gonna answer your question basically in two parts because I'm not sure I clearly understand it. Okay. So in a preventative maintenance test that has already triggered, okay, in the actual task itself, right, you cannot edit the original comments. Okay, so you can't edit what has been put in there. Okay. If you are looking to edit a task that is in the scheduler, that you want to go in and add additional information or change additional due diligence information or notes, then you would need access to the scheduler and you would need access to that. But again, you have to be very careful here. If you're making changes, depending on whether you have access or not, you have to make sure that based on how your organization is set up, do you have permission to do that? Right? Because standardized preventative maintenance that's been set up by your organization has been set up a certain way, right? So again, if you have a standardized preventative maintenance list that has been pre-populated or provided for you, then I would always say don't make changes to it unless you have permission to make changes, because any instructional information they put in there requires somebody taking the work and doing and putting that information in. Okay, so again, I would always circle back to the person who started the, I guess, facility implementation or who is a master user and have that conversation depending on how your organization is set up. It could be a standard general manager, maintenance manager, anything. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. Thank you. Natalie, when multiple people are involved in a job, I can only assign one person at a time, and in the reports, it only shows the last person who worked on it.
Yes. So in the system, I don't know if anybody is aware. So work orders can be reassigned. Yes. There is an audit log built into a task. So you can see who last modified something. I'll show everybody what that looks like because most people aren't aware that it even exists. They might even not know about this feature. But if I click on that task and I right click, this cool little menu falls open and you will see an audit log here. And the audit log basically opens up every time somebody makes a change to the system. It will show you who last modified it. Okay. So then to answer your question, there are always changes coming to the maintenance care system. So I would probably keep watch or sign up for our newsletter, right? Which I can point everybody to if you want to on any of the new features that may be coming. Maintenance Care is always working extensively to update and upgrade the system. And I'm sure there's things on our roadmap that are coming that are going to enhance everybody's workflow in the future. Okay.
Good answer. Hi, Ringo. Ringo's asking, how should I set task class correctly? Should they be sorted by importance? Because task types and classes are somewhat similar.
Okay. So it's a good question. I like to look at it in two ways. Okay. So let's look at demand work orders as opposed to preventative maintenance. In demand work orders, some of our customers add classifications to sort of sort by priority level. So they might have like a classification in there for high priority or emergency that allows them to functionally report on something that might have been time sensitive and sort of cover themselves off, right? When it comes to preventative maintenance, I usually look for two types of classifications. One would be compliance, definitely, or audit, or however you want to do it. Some of our customers, use different wording for things like that. But I would probably use one very general one, and you could maybe do two. And it depends on how your setup is, right? Compliance might be something that has lots of different task types under it. But maybe you want to be even more specific where you want to have something that you're audited on, right? So again, it really is up to you on how your organization is set up. But usually I'll say some sort of like, state audit, provincial audit, compliance audit, or just general audit. Some customers might have centralized accreditation things that might happen. You might want to put in things that come through on accreditation. It's really up to you on how you sort of do that. So remember, there's two types of classifications you can set up in the system. One is more on the demand, right? Being able to filter and find and be able to separate a standard task to something that might need more elaboration. And again, maybe in some cases, a classification.
Thank you. Anonymous attendee is asking, when a worker uses the check mark, does it close the work order? I'm
When the
guessing
worker use,
the check mark, which is the blue check mark, does it close the work
no,
order?
it does not close the work order,
Okay, good.
right? So maintenance care is built on manual changes, right? It relies on the person doing the work to move things through to completion. So you might start a new task that moves to pending, which is in progress, to closed. The check mark basically Once you close the task and you put your time in, then you're going to put in that you completed or whatever notes you're going to end. But I like completed in my at the very end. I just like that. That's the way my brain works. Completed in signature, but it does not close the task.
Thank
Right? It does show the last time you modified, and that date and time will match, right? But again, closing the task usually happens within the few seconds of changing the status, adding complete, and my signature. Good question, though.
Excellent. Thomas is asking on the phone app, when a ticket is created, can I copy the phone number and call the user? That's a good one. I was asked this one before.
Sorry, can you repeat that
On the phone
question?
app, when a
Uh-huh.
ticket is created, can I copy the phone number and call the user with it?
I guess she could. Sure.
Yeah, you could
Yeah.
try it. I was asked this before, and just yeah, it
Yeah.
depends on your phone and the way you work. It depends on your
Yeah, it,
if
it
it's in
depends on your workflow
your
really and how
workflow.
you, yeah.
Yeah,
So again, sure. I mean, if that's the
yeah,
ability, you could copy it and
absolutely.
go to your phone and phone them. The phone number is put in for a specific reason. Some of our customers have it as part of their request page protocol, right? Where they require a phone number so they can call and ask questions, right? So again, that can be added into the system. It's not part of the standardized workflow, but it's an enhancement of the workflow. So it's part of your protocol. I would imagine it's there for a reason, and I
Yeah,
would assume that you could. Sure.
excellent. Natalie again, she's asking, how can I identify how long a task lasts between one status and another? I can see
Hmm.
that the work order's age is tracked from creation to closure, but I don't have a way to measure the intermediate statuses.
So a report will give you the timeline. It'll give you what's called resolution time. So let's explain the two different types of times in maintenance care. Resolution time is automated, and you can see on the screen here that this one has date and time stamped right from the task came in, and then eventually to when it's closed, and that's called resolution time. So in your column setting, you can actually see the completed, uh, modified. You can add those columns, and you can see it. The aging is basically very broad, right? So I mean, based on when it came in to then it could be a day. It looks at a day. But if you want an actual report, there are reports built into maintenance care that will give you standardized resolution time or by duration, but also the big report in maintenance care will actually give you a full resolution time, which is like 5 hours, 13 minutes, right? From time it came in till it was completed, or there was a status change. And it will give you the column breakdown in there. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Natalie, your last question is good, but is not related to this presentation. So what I would do if I were you, I would copy paste this and why not go onto our chat and ask, and some of our staff at support will probably be able to answer your question.
And also
I'm
to
sorry
use
about that.
the online wiki guide is great too. It's a
Yeah.
good, really great resource in the system. So if you can't find answers or your answers are more elaborate than what the wiki guide provides, definitely reach out to support. We have a great team there.
Yes. All
So,
right. That seems to be the end of the list that we had of questions. A lot of questions. Good questions.
mhm.
Thank you all for this, and we'll see you next month with another presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Take
Enjoy the
care.
month. Bye bye.